Hey everyone, that old expression, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Yeah, that couldn't be any more true today than it was when it was first originally coined. As a libertarian, there's a very good reason why I don't identify with either side of the political spectrum or political divide. And why that is because I've known my whole life that power is not something that you can point to as only being a presence in one side of the political divide, or one side, whether you're talking about sex, no matter, or whether you're talking about races, colors of people's skin. None of those superficial aspects of what it is to be a human being has anything to do ultimately with human psychology in terms of having tremendous amounts of power at your disposal. All people are susceptible and vulnerable to using the power that they've been given or that they have taken against their counterparts. That is just a reflection of reality. Like I say, it's I mean, sure, you can break it down into the political realm, but a person thinking about it properly would break it down into the psychological or the evolutionary realm. Because that's the thing, we have to understand things from the macro aspect. Stop focusing on this little teeny little area or picture that the political or ruling class constantly tries to keep you focused on. Step back from the bullshit narratives and just start thinking about these things critically. Power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Which is why the founding fathers of the U.S. Constitution decided to keep government powers at bay and minimized and greatly restricted, because they understood fundamentally that that is what happens and that'll take place. The minute you grow the size and scope of government, which is a monopoly of force of violence, the more you grow that kind of power, whoever takes or assumes that power or controls that power is always going to use it against their opponents or their ideological counterparts. And that's just a reflection of reality that I don't know who the hell would even be able to deny that, whether you're from the left or right. You tell me as a left-winger that you haven't seen right-wingers use political power against you? Or are you saying as a right-winger that people on the left side haven't used political power against you? Yes, that is a reflection of reality. Once again, which is a perfect reason why it is so important to restrict or greatly limit the power of those who represent that monopoly of force or violence. And this article helps stress that point quite clearly. Headline out of Global News, Canada, BC government looking into fines for people who engage in racist behavior. This being reported by Richard Zussman, November 19th, 2019. So as we know, it's the BC government that's basically ruling the roost out there in British Columbia these days. And once again, that's one of those left-leaning, more socialist type governance structure or political party in this country. And what are they looking to do today? But use the full force of government to come down on people that are saying things that they don't like. And even though they're only suggesting that it's a fine, when you think about it properly, what is a fine? It's an economic imposition thrust upon whoever this person is that may receive the fine. But what is a fine? It's money. Well, how do you pay that back? How are you going to pay a fine? Well, you have to go to work or do something in some capacity to earn that, which means you have to be a slave to the state because, hey, whatever that fine's going to be, if it's $100 and you make $100 a day, well, that means the government's saying you got to work for them for that day for daring to utter a word that they don't like. Which, if you think about it, it's basically another form of slavery, just with a sleight of hand in how it's actually performed. The BC government is looking into whether people who engage in racist behavior can be ticketed. Delta North NDP MLA Ravi Kahlon has sent a letter to Public Safety Minister Mike Farnworth formally requesting the province look into what powers the province has to crack down on racist and hateful behavior. I understand that some jurisdictions have implemented new non-criminal sanctions to deter this behavior, such as ticketing, the letter reads. I would be grateful if your ministry could determine what options might be available to better deter perpetrators. Kahlon has been traveling the province to meet with people about hate and racism in BC. The letter comes as communities have noticed a rise in groups like the Soldiers of Odin and the Yellow Vest movement, which drew criticism for attracting some members of the far right. People are afraid in their communities. They know that these hate groups are organizing in communities, Kahlon said in an interview. My request to the Solicitor General was to do a scan of what other jurisdictions are doing to address public hate speech. Several communities also expressed concern to Kahlon that New hate groups are establishing themselves in BC and are seeking legitimacy by registering as societies under Societies Act. To address that, Kalin is asking the BC government to speak to the Canadian Security Intelligence Services, CSIS, about ensuring BC is doing everything possible to prevent the growth of these groups. So anyways, folks, I'll place a link to this article in the description of the video below. But I'm looking here, and I'm not getting it, and I'm not going to get it because, once again, this whole pretense of hate speech or behavior, what does it all mean? I don't know. It's completely subjective, right? It's open to interpretation and up in the air at this point. So it's just basically rule by decree or edict. If I deem what someone said to be hateful in some way, and well, first of all, that's the thing. In Canada, we have this thing where there's such thing as hate speech. In the U.S., no such thing. Freedom of speech says, no, you can be hateful in your speech. That's the whole point of freedom of speech. Actually, the whole point why we have to protect freedom of speech is for people saying nice things about each other. It's actually for people that say hateful things. That is literally the point of freedom of speech. But in Canada, nobody seems to grasp that fundamental concept, or very, very few Canadians do. I don't know what the hell is wrong with this country. I don't know how far the people have fallen or gotten away from what it even means to be a free human being no more. As a matter of fact, I feel like a complete alien in my own country. Because most of the people I talk to don't seem to actually have a firm grasp or understanding on what freedom of speech even means or entails. Which tells me that, like I say, the media, the people that are leaders in the culture, the media, or the politicians, or the ruling class in this country, or the educators, they're all failing Canadians tremendously because the majority of them don't fucking understand what it is to be a free human being, what freedom of speech even means or entails, which is a sad reflection of reality, especially the fact that we live in the early 21st century. How in the hell can you live in the age of information and not fully grasp or understand what freedom of speech is all about? I don't know. Massive amounts of fail, lots of blame to be placed all over those entrenched institutions that seek to control how people think about things. But at the very least, like I say, so if someone says something, so let me just clarify this a little bit. So if somebody says something that somebody doesn't like, what government suggests doing, what this hack, what this moron, what this authoritarian is trying to suggest is, yes, let's escalate. Not just the division, but let's, rather than just words, let's bring it up to imposing people with monetary punitive damages that causes harm to their own economic bottom line. So that's an escalation, not just of tensions, but of retaliatory force, which at the end of the day was it. Escalation seeks more escalation. I mean, think about it. As a parent, if your kids did something wrong, and then the way you taught your kid if they did something wrong was to do something even worse than what they did originally, what kind of a lesson, what kind of teacher would you really be at the end of the day? Well, the only thing that you would have actually taught your kid is, oh, I guess I just got to learn to be stronger, more forceful, and use more violence as a means to an end. Because at the end of the day, might makes right. Well, that's what government's suggesting. That's what this hack is suggesting, is might makes right. And like I say, I'm not a fan of that, but at the end of the day, I can function in that world. The problem is that these people only want to have that might makes right mentality in a closed off environment where they get to pick who has that might. Whereas if it was more free market, you'd see these people don't nearly have the might that they wish they had. Anyways, like I say, I'll place a link to this article in the description of the video below. Once again, authoritarians, they come from both sides of the political divide, folks. Make no mistake about it. And actually, it seems to be those on the left who seem to be dominating not just the politics, but the media and the education institutions in this country. And what they want to do, I mean, look at what they're saying. They want to shut down and silence or oppress anyone that challenges their own political orthodoxy, ideology, or says something that they don't like. So who are the true authoritarians, right? I mean, you know, even if someone says a bad word, let's say someone calls me a honky or an evil white guy, like, well, I mean, I would just give them back the kind of words. Hey, you want to bring words to me? I'll give you back the same kind of words, but it'll just be words at the end of the day. I'm not going to punch someone for calling me a name or lock them in a cage or make them have to work me for a day or maybe a week or maybe a month, be my slave for saying something I don't like. But hey, these proponents of the left, these authoritarian collectivists, that's what they're all about. Escalating tensions, divisions, and threats of violence or imprisonment. Because, yeah, that's another thing with fines. Don't pay your fine. Keep going. Keep refusing to fall in line with whatever the state imposes upon you. Even if it starts out as a minor fine, yet keep going against it. Don't yield or conform to the imposition they placed on you, and see how far they'll escalate that. At some point in time, it might get to the point where they send men to your house, to your door, or lock you in a cage for not paying that fine. That's another thing a lot of people don't take into account. Even something that's not criminal in nature in terms of the punishment can ultimately turn out to be that way if you don't conform or submit or comply. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.